The papyrus is warm. Another man's grip has left its heat in the small scroll now pressed into his hand. He does not look down. He does not read it. His fingers close around it, the way a busy man pockets a thing he means to read later. There will be no later. He has minutes. This is Gaius Julius Caesar, 1 month into his rule as dictator for life. By the time this morning is over, he will be dead at the foot of his oldest rival's statue. 23 wounds in the clothes of an ordinary citizen, and he was warned repeatedly by people who loved him. Everything you think you know about how he died is wrong. Rome, in the spring of 44 BC, is a city that has just done something it has never done before. 1 month earlier, the Senate named Gaius Julius Caesar Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life, not for a season, not for a war, for life. No Roman had ever held that title. The republic that prided itself on killing kings had, in everything but name, made one. The date is the 15th of March. It is the most precisely dated assassination in all of antiquity, fixed to the hour by men who would write about it for centuries. The Senate is to meet that day, but not in its usual hall. It meets instead in a chamber attached to the Theater of Pompey. The monument was built by the rival Caesar had defeated in civil war and outlived. Caesar will die beneath the gaze of the man he beat. Roughly 60 senators know what is coming. Only a small inner circle knows the full shape of the plan. The rest simply know to be there and to bring nothing that looks like mercy. And in the Domus Publica, in the gray light before the city is awake, a woman who has not slept is watching her husband's face, deciding whether to tell him about her dream. He wakes before he wants to. The marble floor of the Domus Publica is cold under his feet. The braziers not yet lit. The spring morning sitting in the stone like winter that has not finished leaving. He is not well. He has not been well for days. There is a heaviness behind his eyes and a thinness to his appetite that he does not like to admit. Breakfast is set out for him. Bread, a little cheese, wine cut with water, the ientaculum of any Roman, rich or poor. He picks at it. The bread is coarse against his tongue, and he eats little of it. The wine is sour and warm, and he drinks less. A man who has conquered Gaul and crossed the Rubicon sits at his own table and cannot finish his breakfast. Calpurnia is awake. She has been awake most of the night. She is his third wife, and she is not a foolish woman, and she does not frighten easily. But she has dreamt of his death. In one telling, she watched the gable of their house collapse. In another, she held his body in her arms while it bled. She does not speak of omens. She speaks of him. She asks him plainly to stay home. Her hand finds his arm and grips it, and it is the only thing in the whole morning that pushes back against the day. He had half a mind to humor her and stay. He was not feeling well anyway. And then the priests arrived to take the morning auspices, and the first animal opened on the altar had no heart. The courtyard smells of sweet smoke and copper. Incense rises off the altar, and under it sits the heavier smell of blood, where the priests open animal after animal, looking for a clean sign. In Rome, this is not faith, it is procedure. Before any important act of state, the auspices are read. A man who ignores a bad reading pays for it later, in the talk of the forum. The readings will not come clean. The first victim had no heart. They bring another. The signs are wrong again. The haruspice, the reader of entrails, falls quiet, and the silence in the courtyard is its own kind of warning. This is not the first sign. Weeks earlier, A seer named Spurina had told Caesar to beware the Ides of March, the very day now arriving. The line will outlast everyone who heard it spoken. Calpurnia has not left. She is still asking. She is, by every account that survives, completely correct, and she is losing the argument anyway. That is the cruelty of the morning. The one person reading the day rightly has no proof, only a dream and a feeling. And Caesar deals in evidence, and yet he wavers. He is unwell. The signs are foul. A dictator who cancels the Senate looks cautious, perhaps weak, but he has half decided to send word and stay. He had nearly decided he would send word that the session was canceled. And then there was a knock at the door, and the man on the other side of it was someone Caesar trusted completely. If you have made it this far in, take a second and subscribe, because we are about to get to the part the textbooks ruin. You know his last words. You have heard them your whole life. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you he never said them, and that the man who put them in his mouth was not even Roman. The man at the door is Decimus Brutus, not the famous Brutus. There are two, and the story has spent 2,000 years confusing them. Marcus Brutus will hold a knife in a few hours. This is the other one, Decimus, a soldier Caesar trusts, a man named in his will. He is also one of the plotters, and he has come to make sure Caesar leaves the house. He does not argue with the omens. He does something cleverer. He laughs at them. What will they say, he asks, when the dictator of Rome dismisses the Senate because his wife had a bad dream? The senators are seated and waiting. They have honors to grant him. To send them home over a nightmare is not caution. It is an insult. And worse, it looks like fear. This is the hinge of the whole morning. Caesar's genius was reading people, every room, every rival, every crowd. And here, a friend reads him instead and uses the one lever that moves him. How it will look. He stands. He reaches for the toga draped over the chair and pulls it on without ceremony. White wool, the purple stripe. No armor, no guard. Calpurnia's hand is still on his arm. As he turns to go, her fingers open, and the contact she held all morning slips away. He chose the Senate. He chose Decimus. He let go of his wife's hand, and he stepped out into a spring morning that was the last he would ever see. The walk is short. That is the cruelty of the geography. The distance between his door and his death is one a man covers without thinking. On the way, a stranger steps close and presses a small scroll into his hand. It is the warning. It names the men and the plan, in writing, in time. Caesar takes it the way he takes the dozen petitions pushed at him every day. He holds it unread and walks it straight into the room where it would have saved him. He enters the hall beside the theater of Pompey. His own footsteps echo under the portico, and then they stop. The sound that replaces them is the rustle of senators rising to their feet around him. For a moment it could be respect. It is not. The circle tightens. There is the small, dry scrape of a blade leaving the fold of a toga. And then there is no more room and no more doubt. What he does next is the last thing he chooses. He pulls the fold of his own toga up over his face so that no man will watch him in the moment of dying. He falls at the base of the statue of Pompey, the rival he defeated, who now looks down on him in cold marble. That is how the morning ended. Now, 3 things almost everyone gets wrong about it, starting with the one line you are certain he said. Decoded 1, he never said et tu brute. You know the line. 3 words, the most famous dying breath in history. Et tu brute. Here is the problem. He almost certainly never said it. The Latin line you are picturing comes from a play. William Shakespeare wrote it in 1599, more than 1,600 years after the murder. The ancient sources tell a different story, and they don't even agree with each other. Suetonius, our fullest source, says that by most accounts, Caesar said nothing at all. He simply pulled his toga over his head and died. There is one contested version, and even it isn't Latin. A few writers claimed he spoke in Greek, the private language of the Roman elite. Kaisu, teknon. You too, child. Not friend, not Brutus. Child, with its quiet hint at a rumor that Brutus may have been his son. Decoded 2. He probably wasn't epileptic. You have probably read that Caesar had epilepsy, the falling sickness. Ancient writers describe him collapsing, suffering attacks in his later years. For a long time, the obvious label was epilepsy, but a body of modern medical scholarship pushes back. The symptoms on record, attacks beginning late in life, headaches, dizziness, possibly bouts of low mood, fit a series of small strokes at least as well as they fit epilepsy. Doctors call them transient ischemic attacks, brief interruptions of blood to the brain. The honest answer is that we do not know. The debate is open. The point is simply this: the confident line you'll see everywhere, Caesar the epileptic, rests on far shakier ground than it sounds. Decoded 3. He was warned and walked in unarmed on purpose. Here is the part that should change how you see him. The warnings around Caesar's death are not legend invented afterward. They are reported across separate sources, Suetonius and Plutarch among them, drawing on earlier accounts now lost. Spurinna and the Ides, Calpurnia's dream, his own illness, the failed sacrifices, the scroll pushed into his hand on the walk. That is not myth. That is a man given every possible chance to stay home and refusing each one. And here is the detail that settles it. Months earlier, Caesar had dismissed his Spanish bodyguard. He said it was better to die once than to live forever in fear of death. He walked into that hall on purpose, with no guard at all. One last forensic note: his physician, Antistius, examined the body and judged that of 23 wounds, only one, the second to the chest, was fatal. It is the first recorded autopsy in history. He was not surprised by his death. He had simply decided to stop running from it. The morning is over before the city is fully awake. Caesar lies at the foot of the statue, the white toga drawn up over his own face. It was the last act left to him, and the one he took. Around him, the men who did it have gone quiet. There is no shouting now, no triumph, only the sound of breathing and the cold spring light coming flat across the marble. He lies in the clothes of an ordinary citizen, not a general, not a king, the most powerful man in the world, dressed like any Roman in the street. Above the body, the carved face of Pompey looks down, the rival he chased across the world, defeated, outlived, and buried. He could have stayed home. His wife begged him. A priest warned him. A stranger handed him the plot in writing, and he carried it, unread, into the room where they killed him. 21 centuries later, we still get his last words wrong, still misname his illness, still tell the story as a surprise. It was the least surprising death in history. He simply decided he would rather meet it once than fear it every day. That is the trade he made.